All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Janine. And for those of you that don't know who I am the events programming manager at Meetup. And welcome to another Meetup Live event. Today, we are joined by Patty Lennon, woohoo, best-selling author, speaker, certified coach, and the founder of the Receiving School. She's going to do a monologue on removing roadblocks and increasing your drive. During this event, you will learn to start your day with a 5-minute practice to get inspiration flowing. Patty will also explain how to make contacts that will fuel your passion. And you'll learn to draw helpful boundaries, focus your energy, and get on a path for personal and professional success. Before we pass it on to Patty, I wanted to go over some guidelines and really quickly our agenda for today's event. So this event is being recorded, but do not worry, you will not appear on camera. It's just Patty and myself. So if you have to leave early, you can catch a recap and a recording of this event on our blog at meetup.com/blog. Everyone is muted. You can only hear Patty and myself. We will be turning off the chat shortly, but we do encourage you to ask questions, and you can submit your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And lastly, we have closed captioning. Thank you to Zoom. To turn it on, you can simply just click on the live transcription button icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preference. So I just did opening remarks. I'm going to briefly introduce Patty, and then she is going to take it away. And as I mentioned, we encourage everyone to, share their questions. So if you can submit your questions in the Q&A feature, I will pick some questions to ask Patty during the Q&A session. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce Patty. As I mentioned before, Patty is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, a certified coach, and the founder of the Receiving School. She is a former Type A corporate banker who discovered there was more to life than making money. Patty holds a master's in psychology and has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, and Daily Worth. She blends brain science and metaphysics to help her fellow humans manifest their dreams into reality. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
I am going to jump off the screen and let you take it away and sit back and take notes. I will see you in a little bit.
All right. Awesome. Well, I am thrilled to be here with all of you. And I just want to speak to something that's in my bio, just for those of you who felt a little curious or maybe concerned about something. So in the introduction, we talked about that I blend brain science with metaphysics. So usually people are okay with the brain science part, but the metaphysics part may not jive with the way you see with the world. So I want to assure you that as we go through this, everything I'm showing you and teaching you is grounded in brain science. At times, there may be some language I use that feels a little metaphysical, and I can always ground it back into, more logistical, practical, non-woo terms for you. So feel free to ask questions if something, the way I describe something, doesn't make sense with the way you see the world, the way you see your connection to the universe, etc. So if you are like most people that I speak to these days, and I have access to a community of thousands, my own community, and then I also speak throughout the country. And what I'm hearing from a significant number of people is the feeling that they are doing more and getting less results with their efforts. Or maybe you're not doing more because you were always a high performer or you were always putting forth a big effort, but you're finding that the effort you put forth isn't getting you the results you want. And that was why we leaned into that idea of, how to remove barriers to success. Because when you have that experience, it feels like there's almost something in your way that's holding you back. So if you have had that experience, especially since the pandemic, this is going to tell you a bit about why that's going on and how to shift out of it. Now, if you are moving and grooving, you're one of those few, I would say maybe 3-4% of the population that is really moving and grooving, what I'm going to share with you is going to help you groove and move even faster. So, one of the things I do want you to walk away with is a morning routine that's going to get you aligned, but we're not going to get into that yet. That being said, I do want to give you a little taste of the morning routine I'm going to later guide you on so that you can see how simple these techniques are that I'm about to share with you and how quickly they can impact you. And so the first technique we're going to go to is breath. So a lot of times the things that keep us stuck, stay as barriers to our success, are actually rooted in our nervous system. You know, some of the things I wrote down, some of the things that people wanted to hear about. They want to get on blockage. I love that new word. Get over procrastination, shyness, get out of my own way. All of these things are rooted in your nervous system. And breath is one of the most powerful, accessible tools that we have to get our nervous system working for us and not against us. So I'm not going to do a long breathing here, but I am going to do just a couple of rounds of deep breath just to help you understand that where you were coming into this presentation is going to be different than where you are leaving it. And I want to help you get to a more aligned place, to a more free-flowing place. So if it's possible for you, put your feet on the ground. It just helps to ground you. If you can't do that in the way that you're sitting or wherever you're positioned, don't worry about it. And if you can close your eyes, that can be really helpful as well. And so you're just going to breathe along with me. And we're going to start by breathing in and out. In and out. In and out. And that's it. Those are your 3 deep breaths. I'll reference them later as part of a morning routine, but I wanted to start off here in that space and just make note of how you felt before the breathing. Well, you kept breathing no matter what, but before the conscious, deeper breathing and after the conscious, deeper breathing. Most likely, if you were wherever you were in nerves or stress, or maybe your mind was just going, it's probably the pressure, the stress, the busyness has lowered itself just a little bit. And why that's so important is to understand that a lot of what it feels like it's outside our control can often be brought into control when we do some internal work. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to go do deep thought work or have to do some big efforts. I'm going to explain to you some shifts you can make in the way you relate to your own life, the efforts you're taking, other people, that's really going to help you get your inner world interacting with the outer world in a way that's really going to further your success, further your ease, further the fluidity that things come into your life that you most desire. So one of the things we talked about were that how to discover the sticking points that are standing in the way of your goals. And what I have found is that most of us walk through the world unclear or unconscious that there is a field around us, a field of energy. And this was one of those places where it might sound a little woo, but I'm going to ground it for you in an experience. So if you've ever walked into a room and someone's been in a bad mood, and before you even talk to them, you just feel that they're in a bad mood. Or maybe you walk into a coffee shop or a store that you go to regularly, and you can just feel that the vibe is off in the place. Like that's the energy. That's the field of energy I'm talking about. It's a field that's been measured by science. And when we're at high stress levels, when we're anxious, when we're angry, all of those things emanate off our body. There's other experiences, though, that emanate off our body that are equally, that keep good things away in equal amounts. And that is what I call resistance. And resistance comes about when we are not in a receptive state with the outer world and with our inner world. And how I came to know about this field around me was when I left corporate banking. So I was in corporate banking for 15 years, and I set out with the intention of starting a career counseling business. At the time, I didn't run away from banking. I actually loved banking, but it was 2008. Budgets started to dry up, and my flexibility to mentor other employees really started to decrease because I was getting more and more work that I needed to do myself, to make up for the people they were letting go. And I decided I really wanted to spend my full, all my time helping other people grow their careers and understand, how they could succeed in the world. Fast forward another 12 years, and here I am, and I actually focus on just helping people improve their lives on every level. And the reason I made that transition was because of what I learned when I left banking and what I've learned over the years. So as I stepped out into this world of coaching and counseling, and I had gotten my master's in psychology, I was made aware of a lot of the personal development work out there. I had not, being a type A corporate banker, this was not something I had engaged in before. And I started to consume it, and I loved it. It made so much sense to me. It was all about improvement and optimization and all of these things. But what I found was it would work up to a point, and then it would stop work. Whether it was personal development or law of attraction, manifestation, spiritual concepts, they would work and then they'd stop working. And I really wanted to get underneath why that was. And one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way about a lot of what I was learning was there seemed to be this heavy focus on staying positive and pushing through and doing a lot of efforting. And what I knew about the brain didn't add up to what I was learning in these places. And so I started to dive in deeper into the brain science to find out, is this working with me or against me? Because it feels like it's working against me. And what I found was that that was in fact happening. And the more I studied it and the more I worked with other clients, what I started to see was some consistencies in the way people approach the world as well as myself. And these consistencies either made life easy on the person or they made life hard on the person. And it came down to whether they were holding a lot of resistance in their field or if they were in a state of receptivity. So by 2019, I had developed a theory and a method called the receiving method that was built to help people move into a state of receptivity. And what happens when you're in a state of receptivity is procrastination, because I heard that from a few of you, procrastination suddenly transforms into something else, which is it transforms into knowing. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you're seeing procrastination in your life, what you're actually seeing is resistance. It's resistance to the thing you're not doing. Meaning, if you're procrastinating on getting something done, there is a part of you, a part of your inner wisdom that knows it's not right for you to take it and do it yet. And when you move into this state of receptivity, all of a sudden you can realize when you're simply waiting for a better time to do something, or in fact, you really are procrastinating in the purest sense of the word, meaning you're avoiding doing something that really is going to benefit you. And then you can start to understand why you're doing that and move out of those habits. When people are in a state of receptivity, things tend to arrive in their lives that they most desire. One person said, show me how to get a job. How did you say it? Without experience. Show me how to get people to hire me without experience, right? That's the kind of thing that can happen when you're in a state of receptivity. Dates show up, romantic partners show up, helpful people. So one of the things, we promised you that you get from this is how to attract helpful contacts, right? And how to make helpful contacts, but really what it's about is attracting helpful contacts, because when you're in a state of receptivity, the people that are for your highest and best good are going to arrive. So how does this happen? Well, the receiving method, I talk about the receiving method in my book, Make Space for Magic. And so I spent an entire book talking about, but there's 3 key tenets that we can talk about today that really will ground you in how to shift this field around you from resistance to receptivity. The first is to make a practice of receiving your outer world. And I'm going to talk about what that means in a minute. I'm just going to give you the other 2. The second, and to me, the second one is the biggest game changer, and it's the one we're going to spend the most time on, is to receive yourself. And just bear with me, because I know that doesn't sound very, very helpful in the moment, but as I explain it to you, you're going to get it. And the final tenet is to do your 100%. And doing your 100% is having an understanding of how to stop at your 100%, how to stop yourself from moving to doing 105%, 110%, which actually ends up pushing the thing you want away. If you've ever had the experience that you're working at something, and it almost feels like the harder you work, the further it gets from you, most likely you're doing like 110% effort, 120% effort. And it's what's actually keeping the thing that you want away. So I'm going to talk to you about how to know in your body, how to have a body signal and a mind signal that will let you know when it's time to stop and pause and allow the world around you to catch up with the efforts that you've already taken. And I really want you to hear that, because most of the people I work with think that they have to do more to have greater success, greater material gains, greater relationships, more relationships, better relationships. And in fact, almost always it's important to do less and allow yourself to be more. That sounds great, but if you don't have any tactics to do that with, then it's not that helpful. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So the first tenet that I talked about, receive the outer world. What does this mean? Well, if you are sitting in a situation, let's say a career situation, and something is uncomfortable, maybe a person you work with is difficult to work with, maybe you don't have the tools you need to get the job done, maybe the environment just isn't great for you. I know I have friends who now are back inside of an office and that doesn't work for them. I have others that are still working from home and that doesn't work for them. All of these things are things that make you uncomfortable. And what we've been typically taught to do, especially in Western society, and I know we have people calling in outside of Western society, so I'll be interested to see if this is your experience, but certainly Western culture has taught us to basically ignore, push away, push through, do whatever you need to do so that you succeed despite what's going on here and not let it affect you. And to a certain extent, that's valuable, except if you're denying things that are actually causing you true inner pain, true inner struggle. And the thing is that within you is the wisdom on how to resolve that inner struggle. But if you don't actually allow it to be true for you, if you don't acknowledge the struggle, if you don't acknowledge the difficulty, if you don't receive that that's actually happening, you'll never be able to access the inner wisdom that will show you how to navigate that struggle. The problem is that this is a hard habit to break because we have been taught that good members of society, to be a good member of our community, that we need to do things the way everyone else does them. And that means success looks like, hustling and pushing and efforting and ignoring anything that feels hard. I have found that that toxic positivity or that hustle culture really works against the brain. First of all, feeling an even type of stress response, meaning that it can navigate difficult situations without your stress levels going way high and then dropping down, right? So being able to navigate the world at an even keeled level, that keeps you in a field of receptivity, as opposed to the resistance that starts to go into your field when your stress levels go up. It's difficult to start to allow in those uncomfortable situations because as they come in, oftentimes you need to make different decisions for yourself than you've made. If you have a difficult coworker who really is making life hard on you, once you let that in, the information you get may be that you need to transfer departments, look for another job, be honest with a manager. And all of those things can be really scary to your inner world, especially when our brains are fighting to stay a part of things, to stay a part of our communities, to stay a part of our job. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what happens in your brain to make you so needful to stay a part of what everyone else is doing, because it's this trying to be a part of what everyone else is doing that really can hold you back and keeps you from receiving yourself, which is that second tenet. So when you were younger, you were from a very early age taught that you needed to be like everyone else. Now, you might not have ended up being that way, but your brain was programmed to believe that that was the right way to go about things. And because of that, you started to reject parts of yourself that didn't look and act like the way that the people that cared for you want you to look like and act like. So what does that mean? Well, one of the reasons that most people over effort and are working too hard at the wrong things and allowing too many difficult situations to exist around them is because the wisdom that I referenced is hidden away, because it was pushed out of sight when you were very young so that you could stay a part of your tribe, a part of, and I don't use the word tribe to try and take that concept from another culture. What I mean is, in your brain still believes, the very fear-based brain, your smallest part of your brain still believes that we are living thousands of years ago when we all lived in tribes. And so it sees your family of origin as that tribe, and it sees that that tribe is necessary for survival. So what happens is the brain is trying to keep you engaged and surviving inside your tribe. And this is how that looks like. When you're little and you are thinking, you're a little tiny child, you're barely verbal, and you are being cared for by another person, you will, without any effort, smile. It's just something that happens. And when that other person that's caring for you observes that you're smiling, they makes them happy, ideally, if you had decent caretakers. And when you see that a smile could make someone else happy, you start to realize there's things you can do that can affect the way the people around you feel. So you work harder and harder to make them feel good because you want your caretakers to feel good. And also because when your caretakers feel good, you feel safe. What happens though, when you're constantly focusing on making your caretakers feel good is that then if you do something like cry or complain or throw a fit or do anything that normal children tend to do, you will receive a reaction that makes you feel that that's bad or wrong. And so then you push that part of you aside. And each time you have an interaction that makes you feel this way, you continue to push those pieces of yourself aside. And oftentimes the pieces that get pushed aside in childhood are the pieces that we refer to as our lazy self, an irresponsible self, and a selfish self. So if you were a young kid and you maybe were resting when one of your parents wanted you to be doing chores, they called you lazy or they made you feel bad about resting. And so your natural instinct to rest became something that you needed to reject. Doesn't mean you always went along with what they wanted, but your brain was programmed to understand that was dangerous. Resting was not something that someone that was good and acceptable to the rest of the community would do. When you were playful and maybe were fooling around when you were supposed to be doing something responsible like your homework or chores, and you got punished for that, that taught your brain that being playful or quote unquote irresponsible was bad and that it wasn't okay. If you took something for yourself or you kept something for yourself and you didn't share because you truly wanted it for yourself and you were little, and then you were told that you were selfish because of that, your brain categorized that anytime you took care of yourself that you were bad. And so all of a sudden it put all these pieces of your wisdom in these locked up chambers in your mind. And as it locked away that wisdom, it also locked away your ability to understand when you needed to have play in your life, when you need to rest, when you need to not take things so seriously, and when you need to take care of yourself. And these are all the key strengths that are necessary to be in a receptive state with the world. So Janine, I'm just going to ask you to put that slide up of the brain, of the amygdala, if you can. So here is the piece of your brain that really is getting in the way. This is your amygdala. And so everything we're going to talk about going forward is in the effort of reprogramming your amygdala, because this is what will create solutions that will open up your field of receptivity, allow you to invite in solutions and success, better contacts. It will make you be a person that people really want to be around. And as a result, other aspects of success will find their way to you. So with the amygdala evolved from our most ancient ancestors. And so it's the part of your brain that believes we're still living thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Its whole job is to protect you. This is where that fight or flight response that you hear about comes from. It's generated by the amygdala. But the reason it's seeing something as being dangerous, oftentimes people say, oh, it thinks the saber-toothed tiger is right outside your cave. In fact, that is not the biggest risk the amygdala sees. The biggest risk the amygdala perceives for all of us is that we will be rejected by our tribe of origin. And the reason is because if there is a saber-toothed tiger, or if there is any other concern, our likelihoods for survival is only realized when we live in community. Now, this is where we were thousands of years ago. And so from thousands of years ago, it got programmed to believe the acceptance of other people is necessary for our survival. And so when you do the things that are right for you, based on what your inner knowing knows to do, it will start to make you feel like you're doing something wrong. So now if you start to think about, and you could take that slide down. Thanks, Janine. So if you start to think about anything you've been unclear about, maybe you've trying to decide what to do next for a career move or how to make your budget work. There's not enough money flowing in. There's not enough time. There's not enough resources for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. If you were to calm yourself down, you would have access to answers. But the way that most of us are programmed, we don't access those answers because they feel like those are things that would make the tribe, our community, reject us. When you think about the career conversation I had earlier, where I said, if you had a difficult coworker and you might think you want to leave your job or talk to someone at work about it, talk to HR, talk to your boss. There's probably a feeling like people are going to be mad at you. And that feeling is going to keep you from advocating for yourself. Unfortunately, the more you try and push that experience away and you try and make it through the day without dealing with that challenge, the more the resistance builds up in the field of energy around you. And as that resistance builds up, it blocks other good things from coming in. So I'm going to talk about a little bit now how to set helpful boundaries. And this may not be easy to wrap your head around immediately, but if you just bear with me, I'll be happy to answer questions once we get to Q&A and hopefully make it more sense to you if it doesn't make sense right now. So one of the ways that you draw helpful boundaries is first to understand what boundaries need to be drawn. And that is to get in touch with those parts of you that you've locked away. And when I work with people on this, I do recommend that they don't try to engage all these parts of themselves that have been locked away, but really just pick one and work with it a little bit and watch as things start to shift in your life. So if you have ever felt like you did not have enough time in the world, that there's not enough time or resources, then most likely you have locked away your selfish self. If you feel like life is boring, that life is no longer fun, most likely the strongest part of you that you've locked away is your irresponsible self. And if you have ever felt, sorry, 1 minute. So if you've locked away parts of yourself that if you feel like you don't have enough money or time, that's your selfish self that you've locked away. If you don't feel like you have any fun, then that's your irresponsible self. And if you feel tired and overwhelmed all the time, that means you've locked away your lazy self. Now, none of those words are usually words we want to be associated with, but what you have to understand is those are just bad explanations that your brain has put on very wise parts of yourself. So I'm going to give you some examples of ways that you can start to bring those parts of yourself back into your life in a way that'll really help shift things for you. So if you feel like you are tired all the time, that you're overwhelmed all the time, and you want to start to access the wisdom that knows how to rest and when to rest, and bring that lazy self forward, what I highly recommend you do is to put a day aside and allow yourself to do absolutely nothing. Now, when you think about it, that may feel kind of scary. If you think about doing absolutely nothing, but whatever you feel like doing, most likely, if you already feel tired and you already feel overwhelmed, that can feel either impossible or it can automatically make you start to feel incredibly anxious. If that's happening, that's even a better reason for you to take on the exercise. And I know that it's a hard exercise to take on. Like I've said, I've done this with thousands of people and I know how hard it is. And I promise you it works. If you are uncomfortable with the amount of resources in your life, you don't have enough time or enough money, or something is missing, especially material, then most likely you are overgiving to the world. And that you are not feeling comfortable to receive. And that is why that lack is showing up in your life. And I will give you a story from my own life that contributed to how I came to learn about these rejected parts of myself and teach them to other people. So my mother, probably around within a couple of days of me starting my own business and leaving corporate banking, my husband was let go. And he was out of work for 2 years. During that time, my mom got sick and I became her with cancer and I became her primary caretaker. And I also had 2 very small children at home. And so those 2 years were incredibly challenging and difficult. So much went wrong. My husband and I ran through our savings and started to build up a lot of debt. And then once my husband finally got his job and we started to rebuild things, my mother's illness became worse and worse, and I was only able to spend less and less time on my own business. And so our financial system, our financial situation became very dire at one point. And when my mom had finally passed away, I remember being incredibly angry at the feeling that I had spent all these years. I left banking so that I could help other people. While my husband was out of work, I was supporting him all the, emotionally, and as well as taking care of my children. We were working, and my husband is a good man, and he was working hard to find a job, and we were doing all the right things, and everything was working against us. And by the end of this journey, we had ended up with over $100,000 in debt. And I was walking one day and just talking to my angels, to my team, as I would do. And, I said, how could you do this to me? How is this fair? Why would you have put me in this position? Because I was not someone that was a debtor. I had not had debt up until this point. And now suddenly there we were with over $100,000 in credit card debt, not suddenly, over years. And I just felt like the universe had abandoned me. And I was really hurt and I was really angry. And I said, what did I do that was so wrong that I deserve this? And my angel spoke to me. And again, this is the woo side. So you're just going to have to bear with me. If you don't believe in angels, then maybe it's my higher consciousness. Said, you didn't do anything wrong. Debt is not a symptom that you've done something wrong. Debt is a symptom of giving more than you have to give. And when I heard that, the wisdom in that statement really penetrated my consciousness. And it was the first time where I was able to fully allow in the weight of all of that debt. And that goes to what I'm speaking about also with receiving the outer world, receiving the things that were really uncomfortable. Up until then, I'd sort of kept it I kept trying to push it away, or use law of attraction to resolve it, or, hope that it was going to eventually, that I'd make enough money where it disappeared and I wouldn't have to look at it. But suddenly that statement from my angels made me engage it in a different way. And I realized I had given more than I had to give in all of these years of, taking care of my mother and doing all the other, my mother, who I love dearly, and I do not regret it in any way, shape, or form. But what I realized is I didn't do a good job of asking for help along the way. I didn't do a good job of leaning on other people. I didn't allow myself to receive because I always believed that would have been selfish. From that moment on, I started asking for help in a completely different way. And it did take us a couple of years, but we eventually were out of debt and now we're financially well off. And it all came back to accepting the fact that it wasn't selfish to take care of myself, that it wasn't selfish to receive myself. And that little grain of truth, which was now almost 10 years ago that conversation happened, got me to go on the path where I'm teaching you what I'm teaching you today about these rejected parts of ourselves. And what I've found is, as much as we think there's something we have to fix about ourselves to improve our experience in life, as much as we think there's something we have to improve on, that we have to stop being dysfunctional in, whatever it is, most of the time that isn't the case. Most of the time is we're fighting the inner wisdom of what we most need to succeed. And once we allow it in, all of a sudden things start to shift. Now, when I started to ask for help, my nervous system, my amygdala thought that would cause people to go against me, to reject me. And in fact, a complete opposite happened. People wanted to help. And I will tell you, people want to help you. And what happened in my brain is that the more people came back and gave me a loving response to my requests for help, my brain released positive chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. And what happens when your brain starts releasing those chemicals, those feel-good chemicals, the amygdala starts to reprogram its relationship to what you're doing. Once it starts to reprogram your relationship to what you're doing, meaning my brain no longer sees asking for help as a dangerous thing, it makes it a lot easier to interact with the world in a fluid way. When you're interacting with the world in a fluid way, things just happen. You're in the zone. Things get easier, gifts arrive. In my case, a huge gift arrived in that when I was asking for help, way back when, someone suggested crowdfunding to me. Now, if you know anything about crowdfunding, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, it was brand new. It was a brand new industry. And so I did use crowdfunding to launch a conference for my business. And in fact, at first it felt scary because I felt like I was putting my hand out and asking people for help. But what ultimately happened is I was one of the highest grossing campaigns in that particular time frame. It was very new in the industry. I was doing it on Indiegogo. They featured me. A publisher came to me, asked me to write a book. I wrote a book. I ended up speaking all over the country, teaching this and teaching other people how to do it. And the universe delivered to me a brand new business model, a brand new funding structure, a brand new way to help other people. And all of that would not have taken place had I not started asking for people for help. So this is how bringing in things that might feel uncomfortable, might feel difficult, are really going that, but are true to you. And the parts of you that you've rejected are really going to start to move things and make you more successful and make things easier on you. And the final one we didn't really talk about was irresponsible self. And so the homework for an irresponsible self, if you feel like that's the one you want to bring in, if the challenge you have is that life feels boring and that it doesn't feel fun, it means you've locked away the part of you that knows how to have fun. And so the way that you bring that back into yourself is just make a list when we get off this Zoom, make a list of 3 to 5 things that you want to do, but you're not doing them because it feels irresponsible. Pick one of them and do it and watch what happens. Pure magic will start to happen. Truly, it's amazing. Now, we can't spend more time on this, but I will tell you, if you pick up the book, Make Space for Magic, all of this is told in more detail. I tell all the grueling details about my journey through $100,000 of debt, how I got out of it, how we created success in this business that I run now. And each of it came from bringing pieces of yourself back into our lives and working with them. So the final tenet that I want to talk about is your knowing how to do your 100%. And this one's very quick and simple. And so essentially, you know you've reached your 100% when you feel like you're pushing a boulder up a hill. Meaning if you're about to do something and it feels like you'd have to push a boulder up a hill to do it, you've crossed your 100%. It means you need to stop and let the universe catch up to you. All right, so I did say I would give you a 5-minute morning routine that will actually help you start to engage your rejected selves, will help you start to increase this field of receptivity around you. And it's very simple. When you get up in the morning, before you do anything else, pick up your phone, attend to a pet, attend to a child, attend to a partner, anything, you're gonna put your hands over your heart and do those 3 deep breaths. Now, why that's so powerful is 2 reasons. One, when you first connect to your own breath, what you're doing is you're telling your mind our first priority is to connect to our inner wisdom. So that's number 1. Number 2 is you will raise consciousness for you and how much time and energy you put on other people's needs over your own. When you reach for the phone, when you reach for the pet, when you reach for your partner, and you're looking to take care of them or resolve things or deal with things on your phone, before you connect to yourself, that's showing you how you're putting resistance into this field that you want to add receptivity to. The second thing is you want to set an intention for how you want to feel that day. That tells the universe, that puts like a notice out to the universe on what you're expecting from the day. And the third is to offer appreciation for 3 things in your life before you start your day. And I do recommend that you pick things that are very easy to appreciate. So a lot of times my first thing in the morning is to appreciate my coffee. I'm so happy I have a coffee maker. I'm so happy coffee exists. To appreciate my hands and my legs because they work and I love that. To appreciate my sight, that I get to see things in the world. Like, you don't have to force yourself to come up with really hard things. Really basic things that are right there at your disposal are the best things to focus on. All right, so Janine, let's open up for Q&A. I know I'm a couple of minutes over.
Hi, Patty. I'm back. No worries. That was great. We have quite a bit of questions, so I'm going to dive right in. The first question that we have is from S.R. Mandel. Could you go into more detail about scientific aspects of the field of energy surrounding people that you said has been measured by science?
Sure. So, well, some of it involves quantum physics that I do not understand, but the basic way that you can kind of experience it is right here is if you put your 2 hands together and keep them somewhat close to each other and start to push them closer and closer together, you will feel the energy field between them. And as you separate them, you'll start to feel that fade away. Come closer, it measures together. You can feel that pressure, and farther away, you can feel it start to dissipate. That's that field. That's the field of energy. So I'm trying to think of the best study to point you to. One of them that's been done is been able to measure actually the vibration of love is different than the vibration of fear. So it's been able to measure the way that fear measures when somebody's experiencing fear versus what they're experiencing in love. And what they found is that at one person operating at love can raise the vibration of up to 20,000 people operating at fear. And let me just fear. I'm just going to see if I can get you. It's an entire book. It's amazing. You know what? Go over to the next question and I'm going to see if I can find the name of this book.
Sure. Okay. So Felix B asked, what became your propeller to get you through the dark times?
Well, for me, it was my kids, because after my mom passed away, and this is not a good answer. It's not probably a helpful answer unless you have children. It really, I really did shut down completely. And my only reason for getting out of bed was that I did not want to ruin their life. And I think probably without my kids, I could have still summoned up that motivation for the other people that loved me. But at first, it was just trying not to harm the people that loved me. And when you put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep showing up, and then you ask for what you need, what will start to happen is that what they give back to you will actually feed the well, and it will help. So I think that's the first place. The second place is to get out in nature. So being around technology, especially in this post-pandemic isolated environment we're in, it really does mess with your brain chemicals. So getting out where sunlight can get on you, being in nature really will help you move forward.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Anonymous. How do you know what was locked away? Is it always opposite to your feelings?
So, you know, I've been teaching this in a program called the Receiving School since 2019. And we have people that have been doing the program since 2019, and they are still unlocking pieces of themselves. So I just want you to know, it's not this finite process where you just dig, you try and find all the parts that are missing, bring them in. I will tell you, the rejected self theory is not something I came up with. It's been around since 1907. It was one of the founding theories of psychological theory. And really what you want to see is when you're in an experience where you feel not enough, try to get to the heart of what the seed of that not enoughness is. Does it feel like you're not successful enough? You're not visible enough? Are you not, financially sound enough? Like you don't have enough money? What is it? Then go underneath that, then go underneath that. And that's really where you find the particular rejected self that's ready to come to the surface. Because the thing is, we have parts of ourselves that are locked away that aren't ready to come to the surface, that it really does need some time and energy and safety to be parts of ourselves we're ready to expose to the world, especially if those parts got locked away because of some kind of trauma. So the ones that are safe that I found that most people can work on without it being too triggering are those three that I told you. And in those cases, I would say just look at those three descriptions. Like, do you feel like you don't have enough resources? Do you feel like your life is boring? Do you feel exhausted? Focus on those. As you get underneath them and start to see that unwind itself, you'll become more and more curious. And then if you get the book, then I give you some more resources that you can use to kind of go deeper.
Thank you, Patty. Okay, so the next question is from Dina Thomas. How do you know if the hard work is being properly guided or misguided?
How do you know? Okay, I'm going to guess what that question means. So how do you know if like the hard work that you're doing is the right thing for you to be doing? Do you think that's what the question means,
Yes.
Janine?
Yes.
Okay, so here's a good litmus test. So if you think about getting on the other side of that hard work, so meaning you do the thing that's in front of you and then you're on the other side of it. When you picture yourself on the other side of it, does it feel like excitement, like you can feel like totally like jazzed that you got this thing done? Or does it almost feel like relief that it's over and it's behind you? If it feels like it's relief and it's over and it's behind you, or you're just like, well, at least that's done, that is not properly guided work. If it feels like, okay, I'm just going to do this hard thing, but I'm going to feel super excited when it's done, then that I would say is authentically guided for you. Does that make sense, Janine?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question. Okay, so was it anonymous? Anonymous asked, yes, we have a lot of anonymous questions. Anything that you can suggest for someone who wants to achieve a lot but overthinks more than acts?
Okay, say that again one more time, because now I'm like toggling between like trying to find that book that I want to tell that person about. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
I'm gonna focus now. All right.
Focus, Patty. Anything that you can suggest for someone who wants to achieve a lot but overthinks more than they act?
Oh, love that. Okay, overthinker here as well. Overthinker here as well.
I'm like double
Yes.
hands.
Okay, so yes, I will. Which is give yourself vacations from overthinking, but understand, and I'll show you what that looks like. Understand that your brain isn't going to, you can't tell it stop overthinking. It's going to be like, oh, okay. But what it usually can get on board with is boundaries. So take the next 10 minutes from overthinking, take a vacation for the next 10 minutes of overthinking. And then once you get through those 10 minutes, then try and go 20 minutes. Now, this doesn't mean meditation. This just means like, you have this task. Like when I leave this presentation, I'm heading out to go to my kids' game. So it would look like me getting in the car and not letting myself think about whether I'm going to hit traffic, right? It's just allowing yourself to drive the car, to do the thing in this moment, and do it for whatever amount of time you can do it for comfortably, and then go back to overthinking. So you essentially give yourself permission to overthink. You don't beat yourself up for it, but you practice not overthinking for short periods of time. And then you build up the muscle, because really what you're doing is overthinking is an addiction, and it's usually a dopamine addiction. So what happens is we overthink because we're searching for an answer. Every time you search for something and you get something in return, you release dopamine. That's why games like Candy Crush and things like Facebook actually become so addictive, because every time like a cool post pops up amidst the whatever else, or Candy Crush, I play Candy Crush, and you get a win and you go to a next level, it actually gives you a dopamine hit, which makes your dopamine receptors grow, makes them crave more. Same thing with overthinking. So what we're trying to do is give the dopamine receptors time outs so they start to shrink, and then your overthinking shrinks. Okay, I am not finding the book that I wanted to share.
Wait, is this right? Someone posted it in the Q&A. It's from, wow, wait, I just lost it. Oh my God, someone just posted, is it from David Hawkins?
Yes, thank you. Oh my God, my mind totally went blank. Yes, David Hawkins' work.
The Emotional Scale, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yes. Then thank you, audience. The other study to look at is Dr. Emoto's study, the water study, where love was put on glasses of water and the word fear and hate were put on other glasses. And then the icicles, and then the water was frozen, and the icicles formed beautiful shapes where energy of love was put on it, and created really ugly, disformed shapes where things like anger and hate were placed, just the words were placed on the water. So that's another cool study that are coming to the top of my mind that are just easy to consume. And then the stuff with quantum physics, I don't quite understand it well enough to teach it. I can just tell you that if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll find plenty of resources that explain that the way we interact with the energy in our field changes what shows up in our field.
Wow. Okay. This was so powerful and so good and so educational. Thank you so much, Patty, for joining us today. This was a really great event. We shared some links in the chat if you want to stay in touch with Patty, if you want to buy her book, follow her on social media, or sign up for one of her courses. The links are in the chat. Before we go, we're going to share 2 more slides and then we're out of here. So Meetup is now on TikTok. Please check it out and follow us at Meetup. We have some really great content on there. So yeah, check it out. And then our last slide, Meetup also has a podcast. Keep connected with our CEO, David Siegel. He interviews some thought leaders in the community and connection space, as well as some Meetup organizers who share their stories and the impact that they've had on their community and that their community has had on them. If you pull out your phone, you can just scan the QR code, or you can simply just subscribe at meetuppodcast.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, Patty. This was such a great event. I learned so much and cannot wait to watch the recap. If you joined late, you can find a recording and a recap of this event on our blog at meetup.com/blog. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great day.